All right, really wanted to pay tribute to the great Bill Yeoman, and with our college football show last week, just did not pay the attention to that detail that it deserved. But we have the great Jay Wyatt here. He was a punter for Bill Yeoman back. Don't want to date him too much, but he was on some great Cougar teams after Coach Yeoman really built that up. Jay, really appreciate it.
Thank you, JP. Good to be with you.
So you could take this in a number of ways, however you want, but the old great coach passed away 92, great long life, but just college football Hall of Famer in 01, obviously Houston Cougar icon. What was it like playing under him, and just what was the legacy that he left with not just you, but the guys that came after you?
Well, JP, I guess the big deal was, as you mentioned, I was fortunate enough to play on some two really good teams, my sophomore year in 76 and then my senior year in 78. And whenever I went to Houston, we were still an independent. I went in 1975, obviously, and we weren't very good that year. We won our first game of the year, lost 8 in a row, and then won our last game of the year against Tulsa. And but everything was kind of being set. The stage was being set for joining the Southwest Conference. And what a year we had. We ended up playing in the Cotton Bowl. We beat Maryland, which was number 2 at the time whenever we played them in the Cotton Bowl. Unfortunately, we lost to Arkansas 14-7. And a lot of folks felt like had we not lost that game, we probably would have played Tony Dorsett and Pitt in the Cotton Bowl, possibly for that mythical national championship. Of course, I played way back in the day, and that was whenever bowls had alliances, and that's kind of how you went. The Southwest Conference champion went to the Cotton Bowl, and like the SEC champion went to the Sugar Bowl and those kind of things. So it was a little different format back then, but really, really good team. And then my senior year, of course, is most noted for the Ice Bowl game against Notre Dame in the Cotton Bowl. But just playing on those teams and being part of that, you knew you were being part of something special at the time. But I don't think most of us realized just how special it really was to have been part of those teams and gone through that era at the University of Houston. But more important than that was the fact that we were playing for such a legacy, a guy that just words are hard to describe in Bill Yeoman. A lot of people think about him as the coach. But a lot of folks don't realize what a great college football player he was. He played at Army back when Army was a dominant force in football. And he was a captain, which, if you know anything about West Point and the military academy, just getting in is a big deal, right? And then just to be, I guess, JP, just to be named captain of one of those teams has got to be just an unbelievable honor. And he played with 2 Heismann Trophy winners, Doc Blanchard and I forget the name of the other guy. I'll think of it here in a minute, having the senior moment. But played for Colonel Red Blake. I mean, I don't think any of us really understood he did and what he was about. I mean, he coached on a coaching staff at Army with Vince Lombardi and Tom Landry. Both of those guys were on the Army coaching staff whenever he was something happened. I don't know whether it was when he came back from the military, because when you have to serve 4 or 5 years. I don't know if it's when he came back or it happened his senior year or when it was, but he was like what we would call a graduate assistant, I think, on that coaching staff. And it had Vince Lombardi and Tom Landry on it. I mean, and that's just unbelievable to me. And nobody, you just don't think about it at the time you're there. I went there and I was 19 years old when I enrolled as a freshman and graduated and was gone when I was 22, and I coached for him for 2 years. And it's just, you don't understand what you were getting to do when you were getting to do it. And, and it was a big deal. I mean, we were big. We were big time. We were well known and well thought of and respected. And a lot of folks didn't want to play the Houston Cougars back in those days.
Only know because I looked it up, but Glenn Davis was the other name.
Glenn Davis, that's him. I knew it was something. I knew I'd think of it. But, I mean, just think, he was a center. Coach Yeoman played center, and he was he was, those two guys were Heisman Trophy winners. And, like I said, just the fact that you got, he went to Texas A&M his freshman year. Mm-hmm. And that was prior to him getting the appointment to West Point. And then, of course, when he got the appointment to West Point, then he went immediately to West Point. But just, JP, I can't tell you what an honor it was to play for a guy of that magnitude. And I guess while you're talking about him, there's two other things that really stick out in my mind about Coach Yeoman.
Yeah. And
both of them happened in the mid-'60s. And it was before I got there. Obviously, I went in 75. But by the time I had gotten there, teams were fully integrated. I mean, everywhere. But, he was the first in the South to recruit an African-American football player, Warren McVea. And then, of course, the rest is history with what happens, on the college football landscape after that. And then the other thing he was smart enough to know was that he needed an African-American coach. And I don't know if you know much about Lufkin and Lufkin Dunbar, but a man that I've always thought the world of, an African-American coach, and Elmer Red, was hired by Coach Yeoman as Dunbar and Lufkin integrated. And Coach Red went to the U of H and was one of the offensive coaches there. And,
wow.
I mean, he knew what he needed to do, and then the other thing that he did, a lot of people don't realize, is he invented triple option football. Mm-hmm. Now, I think it happened by mistake in practice one day in the early 60s, but he invented triple option football. And you just think about the things that he accomplished and he did, and just it was just a great honor. I mean, really, it is a great honor.
You filled in some blanks there, having lived in Lufkin the last 18 years or so, and I knew the name Elmer Red, and I knew he had the tie, but I didn't put it in that kind of timeline, so I appreciate that. But you mentioned, and I was going to ask about the veer, and I read that in one article eulogizing him. So he's known for the veer, but then as he left, he obviously laid such a firm foundation for the great 80s and then segue. I mean, he built that foundation where y'all were dominant for a long time. So contrast that how U of H was then known for the air attack, but he laid that foundation. So speak to him as an X's and O's guy and just what type of personality he was.
Well, the big thing about Coach Yeoman is a lot of people think about triple option football, and you think about running. Okay, it's a deal where you're either going to give the ball to the running back, quarterback keeps it, or he's going to pitch it to the other running back coming around to the same side. But what a lot of folks don't think about is that those teams, when we were really, really good, they threw the ball a lot too. Have you ever heard of the guy named a wide receiver that played for the Kansas City Chiefs named Elmo Wright? The one that invented the dance in the end zone, an All-American in Houston. And so a lot of folks just automatically assumed it was running, and it was predominantly running. We ran first through second, but everything we threw was based off of some kind of play-action pass. And so at the end of Coach Yeoman's time at U of H, he had a couple of teams that weren't very good. But when Jack Pardee came in, and I forget exactly what year it was whenever Coach Yeoman left, but when Jack Pardee came in and took over at the U of H, he inherited Andre Ware and some of these guys, and guess who recruited all those guys to come to Houston?
Mr. Yeoman,
it was
Coach
Bill
Yeoman,
the preceding year. Yeah, the preceding year. So he was fixing to get good again. It was fixing to get good again, but unfortunately, he was. It was time for him, to step aside. And of course, he continued to work at the school and in the fundraising capacity, but he set that foundation, and it. I know we Cougars, we talk a lot about the past because the past was good, and not only in football but also what Guy Lewis did in basketball. And Coach Yeoman and Guy Lewis were great friends, and it's amazing when you think about what all they did. We didn't have a stadium campus. We didn't have a stadium on campus. We played at the Astrodome, and there was the time when that was a big deal. But as it got older and people got used to it, it wasn't as big a deal anymore. But we really didn't have the facilities that Texas had and Texas A&M had, and Arkansas and schools like that. But yet we competed every day. And it was because of the vision and what Coach Yeoman and Coach Lewis could see. And I know this is about Coach Yeoman, but Coach Yeoman could see talent in some little kid in Diboll, Texas, or Overton, or, wherever it may be. And he put together some great teams.
Well, unfortunately, your Cougars and my Owls won't be playing with everything going on, but I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you, because I know you go to most. The last time I talked, you go to most, if not all, the games. So, one, are we going to be able to play a season? Because the American Conference and the Conference USA, it looks like we are aligned, and we're going to try to get this thing going. But overall thoughts on the Cougars, if and when they do get going. What do you think about your Cougs here?
Well, last year was a tough year, and who knows whether we're going to get to start and or finish the season. I think they're going to do everything they can to try to get it done. But I know a lot of folks that know anything about football last year is Dana Holgerson. I think he even redshirted coaches. I think everybody on the team and every coach, I think everybody redshirted, and it was pretty obvious. We weren't very good some Saturdays, but I do believe that we do have quite a bit of talent. And I do think that barring any injuries, the big things that we run into in the American Athletic Conference and say even Conference USA is you get the wrong one or two linemen up front nicked and get hurt, and it really, really creates a hole. The depth is a big deal. But I think the Cougars could be obviously I think we'll be better than we were last year, but I think we could do some big things, assuming, we get to play.
Jay, I don't know if you remember this, but wrapping up, I was first started doing Diboll football. For those that somehow do not know, Jay is from Diboll, like he mentioned earlier. And you filled in. Do you remember this? You did a game when I was trying to find somebody dumb enough to do a game with me. You were smart. You went and still did the PA thing. Like, you're a legend, local legend here. But, man, I was blown away then and blown away now by all that time. So I appreciate the time and always love crossing paths with you.
JP, appreciate you. Yes, sir. Now, I can't, JP, I got one more little story if we got time.
Yeah, for sure. Go ahead. All we got is time. It's a podcast.
When I went to Houston in 1975, we were an independent, and I went as a quarterback, okay? And so I ended up lettering 3 years, and I punted 5 games in my freshman year but didn't letter. So I ended up being the punter and ended up being the holder on extra points and field goals. So I go down there as a quarterback. Of course, everybody that goes and plays college football, you're thinking, okay, I'm going to start, and, I want to go to the next level.
Of course.
And, that's just kind of, everybody thinks that, when realistically less than 2% of all athletes ever get a chance to play pro football. But I always remember this with Coach Yeoman. We were running something, and I was running quarterback one day, and he always called me Wit. He just called me Wit. And he said, Wit. He said, young fella, and he always had these little sayings like young stalwart, young fella. He was always saying, well, I'll kiss your Fannie and Foley showroom window if we're going to do this and that. He always just had this clever way of saying things. And he walked up to me one day and he said, Wit, he said, I'm going to tell you something. Your speed is deceptive. And I said, oh, really, Coach? And he said, yeah, you're slower than you look. and from that day on, I realized that I was not going to be a quarterback, but fortunately, I could punt a football. Mm-hmm. And so from the 5th game on, my freshman year, I was the punter for the next 3.5 years. And that's kind of how it happened. So just once again, nobody can ever understand what it was like to play for such a legend like him.
And you're part of that, Wit. Appreciate it, Jay. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, JP. Take care.